Okay, so today I'm going to be speaking to Annie Spencer. Hi, Annie.
Hi.
My traditional first question, Annie, is what do you do?
It's a bit of a mixed bag, really. Way back when, I was sitting in the very far southwest of Cornwall with a little daughter, having left my husband, not knowing what to do, feeling sorry for myself. And a neighbour came along and said, "You've got to join I'm setting up a training in humanistic psychology." Well, I didn't know what psychology was, let alone humanistic psychology. But it was a 2-year training, but I jumped into it and it changed my life because I became a psychotherapist. I thought, I've always been interested in people. Here we are. During that course, we had different sort of specialists would come down and run a weekend for us, like psychodrama or gestalt or something like that.
All right.
And in the second year, they invited the president of the European Association of Humanistic Psychology. And he came down and talked about medicine wheel teachings. But I hadn't really heard anything about them either. And he spent a weekend while we nearly wrote our arms off, relating medicine wheel teachings to European grammar and the I Ching and Greek mathematics and astrology and everything you could think of. It was really fascinating. And he was apprenticed to this man, Jaime Ostorm, and he thought he would really like to come to Cornwall and see our stone circles. Yeah. So a few months later, he turned up and was there for about a fortnight. We just gave informal teachings in the afternoons to anyone who dropped by, and I felt I'd come home. So there, from this one course, I got 2 strands in my life.
Wow.
And one was psychotherapy. So I've run groups and I see clients and I supervise, and I've been doing that sort of all the way through. And the other strand was developing my understanding, my love, my knowledge, my working with Native American, well, generally earth-based spiritual teachings. I've done a lot of work with, and I've been apprenticed in the North American tradition. Then I worked for a long time in the Guatemalan Mayan tradition. I've done a little bit with the Yoruba and with the First Nations of Australia. And I try to relate it all back to the little fragments, the ragged fragments that we have left in our land.
Yes.
So then I've run.
Sorry, come on. No, you can.
Then I started, so that's why I had 2 strands of my work, sort of working straightforwardly with clients in a traditional way and running spirituality trainings, putting people out on vision quest. And then since then, I like to have a new challenge. So some years ago, I was invited by someone to come and set up an organization, which is still going, to take teenagers into the woods and, tell them stories and get them to light fires and generally get them into touch with the natural world. So, and there are others. So when you ask me what I do, it's a bit of a range.
So let's go right back to sort of your early days then. Where did you grow up? I know you've mentioned Cornwall, but did you start from Cornwall?
I was born in Oxford. I grew up in London. My mother's the daughter of Cornish farmers, so my heart was in Cornwall from, I think at 2 I had pneumonia and whooping cough together, and of course my mother rushed me back to Cornwall. That's my heart place.
Interesting. So where in Cornwall? This becomes significant to me.
Zena, near Zena, the one farm called St Ives.
Yeah.
Tremeadows is my family's, but at one point, I think probably still Zena was pretty overrun by my family. It's not a very big place.
No. And
The
it's,
Tives is overrun by my family. I've got quite a big family down there.
right.
I always think my cousins are the mafia of St Ives. I probably shouldn't say that, should I?
Well, I don't know. There might be,
Not,
yes.
not in a bad way, but they really expanded and have done a lot and own a lot in St Ives.
Mm-hmm. It's a very magical place down there. You were talking about stone circles. I mean, there's plenty of them down that far west of the country, isn't there? Once you get past St Ives, really, it becomes quite wild down in Cornwall.
The thing is, there's a marsh that stretches from the North Coast Hale to the South Coast Marizone, which is about 5 miles wide. And no causeway was built until Victorian times. So I think it was very different, that very end bit. And, you know, the stone walls we're not allowed to touch the stone walls on our farm because they've been there since the Bronze Age. They haven't changed. Maybe a few stones have been put back on, but so it's a bit of a living, they're trying to turn it into a bit of a living museum, but actually it's a very wild place and it hasn't been overlaid. That's the thing. So you go to the stone circles up here and you feel all the overlays of culture.
Yeah.
It just isn't there down there.
No. I grew up in Cornwall.
Did you?
Yes. That's why I thought it was sort of significant. Yes. My mother had been sort of evacuated down there because her first husband had family. But that was sort of more Weybridge area, you know, Padstow, that sort of line, North Coast. But her first husband died, and when she remarried, they eventually ended back up in Cornwall, and I was less than 2, so much less than 2 apparently. But they were obviously going backwards and forwards at one point, and apparently my first steps were on Polzeath Beach. Apparently, I don't know whether that's true or not. It was just part of the, you know. But then we moved down there, and I grew up. My sort of first sort of 9 years were there. But parts of my family are still down there. But it does have a hold over you, I think, Cornwall.
It does.
Especially if you've had that early significant years. But interestingly, I've sort of been drawn much more to the west. Actually, used to go down to St Berrien quite a bit, and then
the last place where there was supposed to still have been witches.
Yes, in fact, there might still be a couple there. Apparently,
probably are. It's a strange. It's a funny little place.
It is. I mean, and obviously, I mean, it's named after somebody who was obviously quite a mystical character, St Berrien.
Well, Cornwall's full of saints. They're all supposed to come over. Some people say holly leaves, and some people say they're cabbage leaves that they floated over in from. I think a lot of them were coming from Ireland, and they were on their way to Brittany.
Yes.
We had Saint Sonara, but almost so many of those little villages had a saint. Didn't
yes, it's incredible. It's just about, and of course, the unfortunate thing is we don't know who a lot of the saints, sort of the Celtic saints, aren't they? We don't actually know who they are really, just the names. It's difficult to work out, you know, who these people actually were, but their names live on.
I think a lot of them were mystics, and they say that the Celtic saints were quite, you know, they'd build a little hut on a headland and just sit and contemplate the sea for most of their lives. And I think Celtic Christianity was very different to Roman Christianity, and I've forgotten when it got taken over and knocked out. I used to know. But...
Yes, I think that's you know, a lot of the appeal of maybe that sort of lived on a little bit more in Ireland. I don't know, that sort of feel about them. I'm not really sure, but yeah, it's an interesting place, Cornwall, I must say. So, did you grow up down there, or when did you sort of move back down there? from
I moved
when you were
back
young?
down.
You said you grew up in London.
I grew up in London, yes. I went to school in London. I used to get stomach pains by the end of term. I was so desperate to get back to Cornwall. I moved down there in my late 20s, I think, back because I then went to university, and then I travelled and, did that shared flat thing and wild times in London.
Yeah.
And then I went to Cornwall, and I had a daughter, and I stayed there for, well, not that long, 10 years or something. And then I had to leave, really, because there's no work. It's one of the most depressed areas of England. By then I'd done my new training in this new psychology, and being optimistic and rash, I think that's my main qualities, I decided to come to Bath. I mean, creativity for me is jumps. I recently decided I'm probably the fool in the tarot pack, who grins as they step off a cliff.
Yes.
And sometimes when you step off a cliff, you can float along and you land in a new land. And sometimes you tumble down onto rocks. But I can't help it. I just do step off cliffs into new situations. So I decided to come to Bath. Why? Partly because I'd done this training and I knew there was one in Bath, and I thought perhaps I could run one up here, which was pretty arrogant, seeing as I'd only just finished the training. But I did. And I thought, Bath's halfway between London and Cornwall. It's a bit more sophisticated, but it's also still beautiful.
Yes.
So up I came. I've been here for a long time.
Right.
Ever since.
You see, because Bath is an extraordinary place, isn't it? You got that feeling of, the fact that it's got those hills, which sort of may have been the thing that drew the Romans to building there. I don't know, may have.
Oh, no. It's got 7 hills.
7 hills.
It's a hot spring.
Yes, the hot spring.
The biggest hot spring in England that was sacred to Sol, the goddess.
Yeah, so it's all beforehand. I know that. Yeah.
They called her Sulis Minerva then. They just stuck her name onto Minerva. They were quite happy. So the Druids, or whatever you'd call them, the old priests of Bath, were quite crafty, and they just made an alliance with the Romans, whereas the poor old priests on Anglesey had a hideous fight and were all slaughtered in the water. So the Bath ones did rather better and had a great temples built for them.
Interesting, isn't it?
People came from all over. Yes.
Yeah.
So it's a magical place. It's true, in a different way. We have to have a bit of a magical place, really.
You do.
It's easier if it's already there and established.
Yeah.
For one. To keep those gateways open.
So tell me a little bit then. Oh, there's a little bit of echo here. I don't know. Let's just pause this a minute. So you did this. You said you ran a course then, up in Bath.
I assisted and then I co-led. I don't know. I think altogether there were 3 trainings, which is about 6 years. And then I moved on and changed my group work. Someone came and asked me to run a women's spirituality training. And so I leapt off another cliff.
Now this interests me, Annie. Can I jump in here?
Yes.
What made somebody ask you to do that? Because that seems to be like another little link in everything. Well,
by now I remember, while I've been on the training in Cornwall, I've met this guy, Jaime of Storm, who has a lot of good in him and some a really dark side to him, which I have to acknowledge. And so I'd started doing what I could, and I worked with the stone circles, meaning I went to see what connection I could make with them. And when I first came to Bath, the first thing I worked with the Celtic fire festivals, and the first thing I did when I came to Bath, 2 friends came up for Imbolc, the February festival, and we asked the museum's permission And for some reason unknown, we got it. So we went in before it was open and did a little ceremony at the spring. And that was really my arrival here. So I was already doing a bit of that. And then this guy arrived and opened an esoteric bookshop. And I went to see him and said hello, and shall we have lunch? And I got to know him. So he knew that I could run groups. I don't know, he's developed his magical and intuitive side. And so he decided it would work. So I ran it like the IDHP. So I got different people in to run different weekends. So it was a very good, so I say it was a really good broad introduction for women to different forms of earth-based spiritual ways. That ran
So
for
what period of time are we talking about now? What?
God, probably the 80s, maybe the late 80s. I get, everything in the past, it's sort of all together, it's not linear. Shall I put it like that?
Yeah.
I think that's how it works, and everything in the future is not. We're just linear in our little present patch here. The sun gets up every morning and walks across the sky and gives us time so that we can measure our days. But at either side, that isn't there anymore.
Somebody was saying to me, get to a certain age and anything more than 5 years ago just seems like only 5 years ago. You see what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think it's like that. I think it's quite different.
Yeah.
I think really time is quite an interesting concept and experience.
Yeah, it is. So you already, this seems, I'm just trying to think back to that sort of period of time in my life and how much, how much of that sort of stuff was around. Were you?
Not much.
No, I was going to say, so you were doing this and maybe not much else, not many other people were doing that type of thing or anything in that?
It feels like, I don't know if there was another women's spirituality training at that time. And I may be wrong, in which case I apologize to whoever out there is jumping up and down and saying, well, I was doing it, But all the way through it felt like it's in a way, it's been quite a lonely path.
Yeah.
Because there have been very few and now there are a lot. And I remember, but on the other hand, it was quite exciting because you were asked to do things really before you knew what you were doing, which is always exciting and experimental. And so I was asked to run a sweat lodge, having been in about 3 sweat lodges. I'm sorry, everybody. And I would be horrified if anyone did that now. But that was the time.
Yeah.
We were all trying to explore what we could, and we had to just play with what we had. And some of us got badly burnt. I was lucky I didn't. 1 or 2 people went mad, 1 or 2 people died. It was very extreme, experimenting with that stuff.
Interesting. So let's just sort of think about that a minute, because obviously anything that's, if you look at initiations in any other culture, embedded in the cultures, there's always a risk, isn't there? Oh, what I've said.
Yes. Yes.
And we are in a very risk-averse society, really. We don't like any risk. So what would you say? What would you say about that, really, as a reflection to what we have in our society that way?
If we're talking about initiation, you have to remember that's generally aimed at adolescents. And adolescents crave edge. I wouldn't say they crave danger, but they crave finding the edge of things. And the edge in life, obviously, is death. So in a way, they're fascinated by death. It seems, endlessly far away, so they can afford to be fascinated by it. So the initiation somewhere was to push them to that edge, or so that they could really feel it in themselves and feel the power of life through being on that edge close to death. And a lot of it was to teach them how powerful life is and how huge and extraordinary it is, and how tiny and vulnerable we are. And then they somehow would find, they would understand a little better their place in it when they went back out into the world. But, you know, when you get older, it's not the same.
No.
And when you've got children, it changes again. You know, life keeps changing who we are and how we approach it. So yes, it's very difficult. I mean, what you're trying to do, you know, if you read, there's Malidoma Some has written a book, I don't know if you've read it, yes. And in that initiation in Africa, which lasted 6 weeks, some of the boys died. Some were badly burnt physically, and some, that was the end of them. Well, if you did that here, you'd go to prison. So the difficulty is trying to get that edge in without risking lives exactly physically. But maybe you can encourage them to believe their lives are slightly risked. You know,
Yes.
you can.
Yes.
So that needs to, so it depends who you're working with and what age they are. But I think that's very important, because I think actually risk is partly what makes life exciting. And I think life is incredibly boring when it's not just boring, deadening, depressing, when it's all safe and does, you know, risk, when you're frightened, there's this edge where you shake and you're either terrified or you're wildly excited, and you could be shifting between both. And, you know, when death was around, as it was until probably penicillin, so it's not so long ago, is it? It's 40, 60 years or something, and penicillin is already becoming less effective. So people understood that death was part of life, which it is, because actually we have to die to feed those who come after us. But, you know, so that's the only way life on this earth works. It's a cycle. But then people also accepted it more.
Yes.
It's just part of life. Some of your babies might die, some of your children might die. You would be very sad. You might not get over it. But you understood that that's how it was also. So it gave you strength, I would suggest, if you have to deal with death. Interesting, someone I know died yesterday.
Oh.
They were, it's funny, isn't it? They were, when you get older, they were a big part of my life, but quite a few decades ago.
Right.
So I think they're a little, someone who shared some things with me that maybe nobody else did has gone. So another bit of my life has gone into the world of death now. So I'll never be able to share that bit again.
No, that's
So
interesting.
you find lots of bits of your life go into the realm of death as you get older. And I think so maybe it's not so frightening to die, because by the time you die, if you live to be a good age, a lot of your life's already gone there. The people who were, you know, holding those bits have gone on. I don't know.
That's an interesting thought. So let's sort of, we've got to sort of like the 1980s. I'm trying to, because I can still hear this feedback. So, you were saying about the sweat lodges that you run a few of these, and of course in those times, I think if you know somebody said that to me in the 1980s, I wouldn't have known what we're talking about. So maybe you could just explain a little bit about the sweat lodge for those who are listening who probably might not know what it is.
I mean, I have to apologize for the temerity of holding one in such ignorance to the people for whom it is a very sacred sacrament. As you probably, or some of you may not know, you know, the Native Americans, and one of the ways they were persecuted is they were not allowed in North America to hold their ceremonies, and by law it was forbidden. And these laws were only really starting to be repealed in the 1970s. So it was a long time. And there were thousands of different nations before they were decimated by us wonderful Europeans. And a lot of them you know, some of them were wiped out completely. Some of them had 4 or 5 people left. Some of them had more. Some of them forgot, or the people who held their sacred traditions died, whatever. But a nation who really, really held and carried on practicing in secret were the Lakota. So a lot of people went to the Lakota for teachings about Sweat Lodge, about Vision Quest, about a lot of things. In fact, sweat lodges were held all over the Americas in different ways, and maybe they were also held over here in different ways. They say they've sound, and I have a friend in Finland, and she'd say the saunas can be a similar sacred place. But anyway, the sweat lodge that most of us know and respect and honor and try to practice comes really from the Lakota. So you'd build a little frame, and the building, it was very sacred, and every bit of how you gathered the sticks, how you put them into the ground, how many there were, how you tied them together, everything was sacred and had purpose and a meaning to it. That's the trouble, you know, one can learn a form quite quickly, but it takes a long time to learn all the layers. And I always think that with all spiritual things, it's the layering that make them powerful. So that's why you have to go to sweat lodge. I mean, I was in a sweat lodge recently where, I tell you, the rocks rose up out of the fire, and then one of them or 2 of them, and then went down again. And I was not in what I would say an altered state of consciousness. I hadn't taken any drugs. I was sitting there thinking, what the fuck? You know, I couldn't do that. You see what I'm saying? Yes. But to raise that power, you have to have been taught layered into the tradition. I mean, the basic format is, so you've made this little structure, you dig a hole in it, and where will you dig it? In the center or one of the sides? Where will you have the doorway? Will it be, which side will it be? All these things are important, and you take the earth out from that hole, and you make a little line, and you make a little pile, and there's your altar. Different people already do it differently because they all have different family traditions. Another thing we don't understand is these traditions, a lot of the teachings came through dreams. And then that would be your way of doing it. So it's a very mystical path. So you can follow the forms because it'll teach you a lot, but in the end, it's a mystical path. So I learned that when I was in Canada, and I was asking about songs, and this guy said, oh, I could teach you a few songs. He obviously quite liked me. He said, but don't let my mother know. She'd be furious. And I said, what do you mean? So these songs were in their family. So I thought, there's no way you should give them out to me, who you've just met for half an hour. But I didn't realize that songs are in, you know, it's much more localized and specific. So what we need to do, but we need to deepen ourselves. I mean, what I'm hoping is that the teachings that, I'll go back to the sweat lodge, that have come over from North America and South America, from Siberia, from wherever, that they are seeding little new plants in us that in time will allow us to remember and regain and redream the spiritual forms that we need from this land. But it'll take quite a while. I mean, I was quite relieved when I realized I don't have to get all this done. I just have to do what I can do. And in a few generations, hopefully, something will arise long after I'm poking up ferns or whatever it is through the earth. Yeah. So to come back to the sweat lodge, I mean, yes, so you make a big fire, and then you have to collect your rocks, and they have to be rocks that won't explode. And I could tell you another story about exploding rocks if you wanted to, but I don't know how far you want to go into this sweat lodge thing. They get heated until the rocks are red hot. Then people go into the lodge. They may go naked, or they'll be, you know, wearing a pair of shorts and a t-shirt or whatever. It depends on people's preferences. And the rocks, after all, are the grandfathers and grandmothers. They've been around a long time. They have a lot of wisdom. So you have to thank them because they're bringing in energy that will release for healing, for teaching, for cleansing, whatever. You see what I'm saying? I'm giving you the very, very, very bare outlines. So the door of this little place is quite low, so the heat doesn't disappear above you. You're really in the heat. And the doorway is quite low, so you crawl in as a sign of respect. Some people might say you're crawling into the turtle. Some people might say you're crawling into the womb of the mother. You're crawling back into the earth to be reborn. But different people will describe it in different ways. So you have this womb there, and over connected by the altar, you have the fire. So again, you have those two energies, and you bring in the water and you have air. So you have the four elements, but there's so much more than that. And then, the mechanics of it is that you all sit around, the rocks are brought in, a great pile of them. I mean, again, the form it takes will depend on the purpose, who's running it, their practice, whatever. But basically, rocks are brought in, the door is brought down, so you're in total darkness, and the water's poured on the rocks, and then this hot steam comes up, and it can be very, very hot. And some people find that quite difficult. So there's a little bit of an ordeal there already. And they have been worked. Some people, I don't know how much knowledge is left. I mean, people go on about, the traditional indigenous people, and of course they hold within their bones and their blood the teachings, but already now the generations of people who've been brought up on reservations in houses and caravans and with television and frozen food, it's not the same. So we're all struggling a little bit with our fragments, but their fragments are much bigger than ours. But it's a very, very difficult time right now, because so much has been destroyed. It's not just been lost, it's been destroyed. So when you find it, there's quite often, I mean, one of the reasons the real reason that I went to Native American teachings was because they turned up in the very southwest of Cornwall where I was, and I felt I'd come home. That is the reality of it. And I do feel totally at home there. But, justifying it, rationalizing it, shall I say, but also I feel for us in England, Britain, it's an easier way in to those old teachings, because we have terrible, terrible pain around the witch hunts and witch burnings and drownings and tortures that went on, and where, families turned against families. And so there's a big disturbance in us around all of that. So in a way, it's easier to go to another culture on your knees and beg for teachings, and then bring them back here, and then through that gateway come back into connection with our land. But that's just, someone else will say, I can't possibly do it that way because I love this land too much. I'm going to do what I can of the Druidic stuff or whatever. It's so important to find your own way, what really makes your heart sing.
Yes.
That's my little lecture on sweat lodge.
Oh, that's great. That's brilliant. So what's the next sort of, sorry to make this look like a little sort of linear thing, but I'm quite interested now how the sort of Guatemalan stuff comes into this with your work. I mean, is there a sort of a period in between what you're doing in Bath and holding ceremonies? And, there are obviously other influences that come in that make you, invite you into some other area of life, let's put it that way.
Yeah, well, there are always influences, because I mean, when I first met this Native American stuff, I couldn't go to the States. I had a small child. Well, I probably could have done, someone else would have done, but I personally couldn't. And so I had to learn what came my way, but I was always, so I feel I know nothing, and what I know is fragmented. And I look back and think, dear God, I knew nothing then, and I know less than nothing now. But anyway, in terms of the Guatemalan stuff, so here's my story, which I've told on podcasts before, but never mind. I was tired one night, and this is something about how creativity works. I do want to bring that in somewhere. It's like it comes to us. That's what I think. Opportunities come to us. Inspirations come to us. I was thinking about it because on the medicine wheel, the East, the place of spirit, is the place of creativity. It's like if you can connect out to the place beyond where everything's already formed, all possibilities are there. And you might dream or something might just come to you fully formed. And to me, inspiration quite often comes just as I'm waking up. Something will come and it's got a whole form and there it is. And either I follow it or I get out of bed and do something else and forget all about it. And it's the same. Opportunities, creative opportunities arrive and in a very small way. And you either jump for them or you don't. And it's partly what you're somewhere already looking for. And it's partly you're tired or you don't notice or you feel whatever, you don't bother or whatever, and it's gone. And you forget about it. So this one, the Guatemalan Connections. And so I'm tired one night and I think, I just want to turn on the telly for 20 minutes instead of slob out before I go to bed. So I turned on the telly. It was quite late. So there were, they put intellectual programs on late. So there's this program. I mean, I don't know. I didn't see the beginning. I came to the middle of it. But what it was a conversation between 3 or 4 quite highbrow English medical doctors and a man with curly hair and a scarf on and a turquoise earring, looking like a pirate to me, with bright blue eyes, and he was talking about his village and what they did for medicine in his village. But the thing that impressed me was he both could talk about his village and he totally, in terms of intellect, totally up there with those intellectual doctors. They had, he was clearly very intelligent. I thought, God, why did I never meet anyone like that? That's so inspiring. So, of course, as you've already heard me say, a few days later, I saw his photograph in a magazine. I discovered he was in England, which is probably why he was on the television. And he was running a workshop, and I went along to it. And there we were. His name is Martin Prechtel. He's written some beautiful books that I'd always recommend because they have so much teaching in them. They're so amusing and extraordinary to read. And so I went to some of his workshops, but meanwhile, I'd already done a ceremony to move me. It's called a grandmother ceremony. It's for women after you've been through the menopause, because you need to change really your entire. It's good. It's another initiation. It's an initiation I actually went through rather than putting other people through not knowing what I was doing. And one of the things that came out of it was that I should work with the young. So I've been piecemealing working with, I put a few young women out on the land, but as usual, I didn't really know what I was doing. Anyway, at the end of a workshop, I was sitting packing up my stuff and Martin was talking to 2 people sort of halfway across the room. And I overheard him say, and I'm setting up these initiations for young people and I'm running a training program. This is the way he talks. And plane loads of people are coming in from all over the world for this. You see, oh, initiations for young people. It's exactly what I'm after. Plane loads of people. Oh, well, then I can go and ask to join in because, he's having mass of people. So I went up to him and I said, this training you're doing, I'd like to do it. He said, what are you talking about? Come on my workshops. I said, no, the one in Vermont, because I'd heard where it was. So he looked at me and paused, and he obviously made some decision in some way that, what do I know? And then he said, okay. And there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 other people on this training. So I went back and forth for 12 years, helping to run these, and it was very hard work, but it was very difficult and extraordinarily beautiful and very, very magical. So I learned a huge amount, and I promised each year that I wouldn't go and hold those initiations myself. So now I'm trying to dream one in for this land. And the girls are certainly coming running in, the young women. So it feels like if COVID allows us, we'll do one next year. And we'll see, it'll be another seed.
Because obviously what you've described about your meeting with him, and but what is it, that Martine, because I've read some of the books, and it sort of comes through his work that he's very different somehow. It's difficult to put your finger on what it is. Could you sort of describe it a little bit, what it's like?
They're all different, aren't they? I mean, I'll give you 3 of them. Storm would come in. He could read people in an instant, really deeply. He was very confrontative. He was very magical. He would work with energies. You'd have no idea what he was doing. Then I worked with someone else called Arwen Dreamwalker. She was much more Western. So she taught medicine, how to work with medicine wheels. She put you out on specific, she had a collection of ceremonies that you had to go through. And it was very rigorous, and it was much more like going to school or something, which is quite a Western way of doing it. Martine's way is that he calls a group. Everyone thinks they're going to go and learn, but what he's actually doing is getting the group to make a huge offering to spirit. So generally his groups are much the same. He teaches by talking. He tells stories. He just talks and talks and talks, and all these sort of things come out through his talking. And at one time he said something really interesting about chocolate, and how in Guatemala they made some drink that was quite powerful for themselves. And he said, see, I can't tell you, there were 2 trees that grow close together, chocolate and something else. He named them both. It can't have been for me. You know how teachings come out and they're for somebody, and you're all sitting there. And I sometimes think I run a group, and it was, in the end, it was for that one person. Everyone else had to come and pay their money, but it was that one person, this whole group. Anyway, I heard it. I couldn't remember the secretary. I went around and asked for nearly everyone in the group. No one had heard about it. They hadn't heard that little bit of information at all. So he throws out a lot of teaching, but it just comes out within these stories. And meanwhile, he's building over 2 days a ceremony. And some things are very, very sacred for him. But if you go a lot, you start seeing what it is he's doing, but he will never explain it. And if you don't know about ceremony, I think it'd be quite hard. You'd see on a certain level, and the more you know, the more you can see. So when we did the initiation ceremonies, he wouldn't come. He came the first time, and then he stayed in New Mexico and worked from New Mexico. And we did what should I say? We went through the motions. But his way of teaching us was really hard. He gave us these lists of things to collect. The first time he taught the bare outline. The next time he taught, he filled it in a bit. The next year, he filled it in a bit more. We had to learn songs. We had to learn prayers in Tutsujil, which I found extremely difficult. But he'd keep saying, just remember, you've got to have the buckets of water in the right place at the right time. That's the most important thing. So what I experienced was we went through the motions, and each time we did the ceremony, and he'd say, this is not for you, and it's not for your learning. But obviously each time you held that ceremony, think your experience of it, my experience of this, in some part of it, not the whole lot, would suddenly drop through about 15 levels, and you'd think, oh my God. And then you'd have to pull yourself together, because you've got to keep on getting the buckets of water in the right place. I think he taught by experience. And I've always found that's the best way. I worked with Jamie Sams. A lot of people know about the animal cards, that Jamie Sams, and another man who I've forgotten. It's very important to remember his name anyway. Brought out. And she would say, in a group, she'd say, I expand my aura. I try to expand my aura over the group. And then they can go to places that I've been to. And she once gave an extraordinary teaching about that we're not, that, what shall I say? Our soul is living, I've forgotten how many different lives simultaneously.
Right.
You just chose this one, but probably another part of you is lounging on a beach somewhere. And I thought, well, why couldn't that have been me? But once, and I totally got it in my being.
Yes.
And when I came back, I mean, I couldn't give that teaching to anyone else, but it expanded my experience of what life really is, of the different. Do you see what I'm saying? So I've always found that the best way. And even when I was learning psychology, but different people learn in different ways. Reading things in books is pretty useless for me. But if I'd go to a training where a man was working or a woman was working with a client, somewhere my body would take it in and I'd learn a lot without understanding that I could then, that was then available to me too.
Yes. So
does that give you an idea of how it works? I mean, that was your question.
That's interesting, because it's almost like you're learning by osmosis type of thing.
Yes.
Another term. I mean, I think the problem with the sort of creative process, the way we're like, obviously I'm involved with music, and how music is being taught and all the rest of it. And it doesn't sort of do that. It's sort of like much more, you do this and you do that. And it's almost like all that other stuff is missed out. And yet you meet some people and you learn because you're in the presence of them. And and sometimes how can I put this? We sort of do something like this with a summer school that we do called Blues Camp, where we've got a lot of really good musicians who are the tutors, and we find that people learn more just by the people being around. When you're sitting having breakfast, and you're having a chat about something, and something will come up in conversation that answers a question that somebody's got in their head, but they haven't actually asked it yet. It's that type of thing. I think that's the nearest I can get from what I can understand what you're saying.
But that's group mind, isn't it?
Yes.
But let's say, creativity, we're such a, and it's getting more extreme, it quite worries me. We're such a cerebral animal, aren't we? And it's getting much more extreme. I like David Abram, who says we've got so entranced by our own creativity, we've forgotten the rest of the world. And that's so dangerous. And really, we learn through our senses, and then we make sense of what we've learned with our mind. That's the way things really work. And when we, people create, if they, if you're making a pot, when I draw, I like to draw. I'm not particularly good at it, but I love a line. Here I am in glasses, but I'll take them off to draw. And it doesn't matter that I see slightly foggily. I can draw better without my glasses, because somewhere my connection with my hand is clearer. Here it's been interrupted already. And I don't have to see, it's my hand that does it. And it's my hand that works with the clay. And it's my body that's taking in a load of information and processing it, and my ears and my nose, etc. And then that's the way we should work. And then the information goes to the brain, and then the brain makes sense of it, and you can then decide what to do with it or whatever. But we incline to say, I've got to take it all in with my brain. And then we miss 3/4. That's not very creative. I know for some people it is, that's their way, but it's not really. Creativity requires, so now I just want to say that what Martin, he won't teach people magical stuff. He won't teach them shamanics. I've avoided that word, haven't I? Anyway, he won't teach shamanic stuff. I've been saying magical, I realize. Anyway, he won't teach people shamanic stuff. He says, you're not ready. You have to change your whole culture. You have to change your whole understanding of how life operates. And it was the same with the medicine wheel teachings. There was a 20 count, and the first 10 are all to do with this mundane life here. And the second 10 are the esoteric. And we were taught to get to the second 10, you have, when you really understand the first, it's a gateway to the other. And anything else won't really work. Not, you know, not so well. So there was something else I wanted to say, but I've forgotten it.
Can I jump in there? As long as
yes.
I can completely see that point about the creativity when it comes to music, because it is about feeling. And interestingly, in the West, of course, reading music has got in the way. It's intriguing that a lot of musicians that, you know, particularly with guitar, because obviously that's where I come from, really. A lot of those guitarists, you know, appeared in the sort of late 50s and 60s, played by ear. And it's like reconnecting with how the creative process works, not necessarily a piece of paper in front of you and all the rest of it. It's a feeling. And again, you know, I would say your description of drawing, that it's sort of coming, there's a tactile thing, there's you know, it's whatever that emotion it generates in you. Before it's really got to that point of there's no analysis. I think that's the thing, and I think that's an important aspect that we're trying to find again. Certainly.
Yeah, well, I know a guitarist and singer who's, you know, he's nearly as old as me, and he's been, that's what he's done all his life. He still can't read music, you know. And I play the piano pretty badly, and I love it. But, you know, I was just thinking when you were talking, and you sort of, your whole being starts getting into it. But the sad thing for me was when I was a child, I used to improvise. So my parents got me piano lessons, so I stopped improvising. So actually it was a real, I mean, they meant well, and I got better technique, you know what I mean? So I'm not complaining about them. But that thing that I absolutely loved, I lost my confidence in it. And then it couldn't flow in me again. So there's something also about creativity. You either have to be really naive. First of all, you have to be sort of naive. So you can just do it, and you don't worry about good or bad. And then that's really important to hold on to.
Yes.
Because if you lose your confidence, then something comes in, some fear or some inadequate or whatever, that blocks that flow, doesn't it?
Yes.
You need to be able to be just open to what's coming in and not worry about if it's good or bad. I always think artists, my experience of artists, you know, down St. Ives, there were quite a few.
Yes.
As I was growing up. They were terribly exciting, of course. But anyway, and they were just driven. And I've got various friends who are various sorts of art, but this is all painting or sculpture or whatever, rather than music. And some can't not do it. And others can not do it. So although they call themselves artists, in my opinion, no, not really. Because that not being able to not do it, it's like with my work, pushes you into hideous situations, but it doesn't matter. It's not, oh God, here we go again. Why do I always do this? But you have to, because you have to continue on that path.
Yes.
And that's so, I think in a way, it's terrible, but it's so exciting. to be one of those who's pushed by whatever's trying to come through you.
There's something that Mick Jagger said about Keith Richards, which was he has to play, and that sums it up. That sort of thing.
It does.
It's not a choice.
No.
It's what you do.
Yeah.
It's what you do, and it's not a case of, you know, I've got to sit down and practice. You just have to play. And I think that's an important thing with the creative thing. You know, I sort of come from the perspective that, you know, ideas have us. You know, we don't have ideas, they have us. And
come and catch hold of us, don't they?
Yes, they do. And then they make
sometimes they don't let go, and you think, go away, and other times they just float by, and you think, oh, that was good. Where's it gone?
Yeah. Well, earlier comment that you made about the fall from the tarot pack, I think that's a really interesting point, because the creative process is like that. It's like, I don't know what I'm doing type of thing. It's type of, you know, that sort of energy that's sort of in that card. And yet, of course, you know, in the full card, it contains everything else type of thing. It's zero, and you know, it's everything. And of course, and that's completely 180 degrees from where we are in our intellectual idea about knowledge and what have you.
I know.
Because in old systems, it was the fool who knew everything, or it was the sort of the idiot that had the answer, or the madman, probably better to put it that way. You know, the mad person, the person who wasn't always here. He was sort of in between the two. And I think that's really true with the creative process. You know, people who look at it from the outside go like, "What on earth are they? What are they doing?" You know, and then suddenly something incredible happens. You know.
Well, I would say I'm an artist, but my subject is I play people. But it's not. Well, I may have crafted it. You have to craft a bit, but it's like it. I can't not do it. I keep, you know, and so I'm following this line here, and then this comes along, and I have to follow that, and then I have to work in that way. But somewhere I'm driven to explore how to get people to dance and express themselves, not dance, you know, but dance and express their being and their beauty, and reconnect with the land, of course, with spirit. But it's like, it is a driven, exciting thing, and I think, but I don't know, every so often, and if you're driven like that, you've got to keep exploring, haven't you?
Yes.
So you've got to explore something you've never done, because you have to find out how to do it, and what could come out of it, and it's so exciting. One is so fortunate, I think, to have that impulse coming through one.
You mentioned we were talking about Cornwall, and you know, the fact that there's so many saints. You know, so many villages are named after old Celtic saints that people don't know very much about. What do you feel about? Because obviously, you sort of hinted at the fact that whatever work you do here can be inspired by something outside. How do you get it to find its roots here? I'm looking for words, but maybe.
Yeah, the saints are not. I can't say I'm a huge fan of Christianity. It's not been very kind to it.
No, what I'm trying to say is,
but I'll go behind them. I'm in my way, because there was no one around. There were two things. I go out on the land, and I go out in the land, and you know, I don't go and hug trees, such a cliche, but generally if I'll go I mean, it started by, I was taught to find a tree. So when I came to Bath, one of the first things I did is I walked out till I found a tree, and then I visited it regularly. And in Cornwall, I visited the stone circles regularly, because my maybe totally mistaken, crazy idea was that those stones have been communicating with humans for a long time. So maybe it was easier to communicate with them
Yes.
than one sitting on a headland who may have no interest whatsoever. And so I just go and experiment. And I used to go to America. Actually, at one point I did go to America a lot, and I experimented. And I was with a guy who he'd kill a deer every year, and pushed in his freezer, and that basically be his meat. He was a farmer, and I tanned a deer skin, and we skinned a raccoon, and I worked with and I tried to be ceremonial around it, and I didn't know what I was doing, but I tried. So here it's been, and when at Cornwall, I'm in the land, I'm in the ocean, I feel a real connection with it. I came to Bath. Cornwall's granite, Bath is limestone. And it took me a long time to feel a connection with the land. And one day I was standing on a little hill, I think it was somewhere near Avebury, and the land just sort of, I suddenly got it. Its beauty. It's absolutely exquisite, extraordinary beauty. It's completely different to the beauty of Cornwall. And then I realized you can actually, if you persevere, you can fall in love with any natural land anywhere, but it takes a while. And the more you know a land, and I don't mean, then people say, so what about the geology and what are the plants? And I don't mean like that. I mean, with your being, the more then you can work with it, the more you can deepen into it. So, I had a very difficult Zoom call coming up last week. And I've got this crazy front garden, which is, those little ones that are the width of a little terraced house, and I don't know, 10 foot long or something, 6 foot. I'm not very good. Anyway, and all these trees have come in. It's got a big holly and yews and an elder. None of them, excuse me, wherever you come from. I didn't invite you here, there's no view, but anyway. So I looked out to the yew, and because I've been doing this for some time, in a extremely short, in a matter of seconds really, I could feel the stillness. Trees are funny, aren't they?
Yes.
And they're growing away and sapping away and leafing away. And yet to us, because their time scale is so different, they can really seem, it's like everything's slow. And if you tune into it, you can just slow down. I once had to get 4 sticks for a ceremony. It took me 2 or 3 days. They had to be from living trees, because I decided, I wanted to really try and feel, try and slow myself down enough to sit with the tree and see what everything around the tree seemed like from the tree's perspective before I would take a stick. To me, rather a long time. So that, and to come back to your question, and I do work with the seasons of the year. I have been working with the seasons of the year and honoring them since almost the beginning of all of this, really. So those quarters and cross quarters, I mean, sometimes I do it with other people, sometimes I do it by myself, whatever. But then, sometimes I learn something from the season, sometimes something will jump out of a book and tell me something. So, information and understanding comes in from all over the place. We once looked up, because, corn, maize is everything in the Americas. So we looked up what could we find about the grains over here. We found a song to John Barleycorn. That was the best we could do. About, how he's cut down, but it's no good. He rises up again, and he's a being, and, but slowly, bits, fragments come in, and something hooks onto something else.
Yeah.
And in some places there's a beautiful picture emerging, and other places still little bits and pieces. That's how I do it.
Yeah, that's because again, for me, with my journey's been like, what's music? Not from the, you know, if you say that to anybody, it's like, well, no, it's no. I mean, what is it? You know, it's a language, but what is it? Of course, that takes you down that route where you get inspired by things, and those meanings come at you from all different perspectives. It won't necessarily come out from music. It might come out from something else that you observe. And you know, English folk music, because obviously, again, the Industrial Revolution and all that, it means that we don't know really what it sounded like, you know, if we go back, because it wasn't recorded. But the lyrics, the words, give you hints of what the music was doing and how they connected to the land, you know, and how they referenced certain things. And you sort of think, well, this is coming from a different place, a very different place in people. How they were using music to celebrate time, you know, the seasons, and what was happening, you know, what was growing, what was singing, you know, what birds were singing. And I think that's something that we sort of really need to connect to, because other musical traditions have still got that in place. You know, you listen to South American music, the biophony is there. You know, the sound of crickets and frogs and stuff. It's in the rhythm section of the music. We must have had that. We must have had that. But and again, we probably have to sort of look elsewhere to sort of go, yeah, you know, Mongolian music sounds like horses trotting. You know, that's the way it is, because that's how they connect with everything else. You know, that's them, that's life. Life is around them and they're embedded in it. You know, for us, it's like, well, we probably did copy the sound of what it was like when the songbird, you know, blackbird was singing, or what it was like, and then when the wind was blowing in the autumn and stuff. And I think that's an important thing, because it's not an intellectual pursuit, it's the feeling, isn't it? It's that once you can sort of feel it in yourself, then you're getting nearer to it, I think. So yeah, you can't be definitive, that's the point. But,
no, but I want to say I had you know, for me it was fun. You know, I suddenly realized actually about classical music. I was in this woodland where there was just a whole collection of different trees. There was some pine trees and deciduous or whatever, and it was windy. And listening to the rhythms of these different trees, I thought, they're the strings in some classical music thing. Sorry.
But obviously, you were talking about Martin teaching songs.
About, sorry, what?
You mentioned about Martin
and songs.
That is something that I found interesting, that I've only had a little sort of connection with South American music from the sort of Icaros, and that I've always found that interesting, how songs have how can I put it, not a purpose isn't the right word. A song has a soul to it that sort of locks it into, yeah, I mean, this is where words fail me. So
a song will take you out.
Sorry?
A song can take you, the Icaros, they'll take you, you know, they come on, those are the ones that come with the ayahuasca.
Yes.
So they'll guide your journey. The ayahuasca opens you up to other dimensions, and that song will guide your journey. But some songs will take you out. You don't need the drug.
Yes.
I mean, the Lakota songs are incredibly powerful songs. They're really strong. And they can, I was in a museum in, they weren't Lakota, in Vancouver, a museum of anthropology, and there were some native kids there it's full, probably all shouldn't be there, of artifacts from the people who lived there before us. Anyway, and then I wandered into another room, then I heard this sound, I went back and this guy was singing his family's song, and the entire museum was resonating with his voice. And what should I say? It fills you up and it opens you out into whatever it wants to open you into. And you sort of can't, you're defenseless.
Mm.
Doesn't music do that a bit?
Yeah.
If it's yeah.
I'm actually running a music writing thing called "What Happens When a Song is a Spell."
What happens
when a song is a spell? In other words, when
wonderful. Yes.
The power of a song is doing stuff. It has some sort of agency, And I think all songs probably did this at one time. In different shapes and forms, just like anything in nature, But because we've sort of commoditized music, it's become sort of sterile. When you witness something like that, you were saying when somebody sings a song, it's the song of their family. There's something else going on, and I kind of don't have an idea. How far away are we from that again? Can we find that again?
Well, some people, it'll just roar through them anyway, won't it? So it's that same thing. What you feel is there's a force roaring through them, bigger than them, using them. So it's like there's an instrument and something comes through it, doesn't it? Yes. The sound comes through it and uses it to express itself. Mm. So the thing probably is most people haven't really thought that way. So it hasn't entered their heads to open up. It's not that difficult. It's just a different way of approaching making music. Yes. So instead of I'm going to make music, I'm going to open up and pray. I'm going to pray to music and ask it that it will come through me now. Yeah. And maybe I have a little form to begin it off. And maybe it's Baba Black Sheep or something, because we have to start somewhere. Yeah. Please, will you come through me?
Yeah, it's good.
And people go.
So what are you working with and on and for and whatever words we need at the moment?
I'm still seeing my clients. I'm working on this. I'm working to bring this initiation together where they're both young people and a community. So it's quite a big project, I'm realizing, but I don't want to see how big it is. It might make me too nervous. So that's trying to seed. A lot of people are doing initiation for young women. I don't know what they're doing for men because I worked more with women being a woman. Age sort of, puberty, 11 to 14 type thing. And I'm more interested in the older ones. So these ones actually are over 19 because I found it was too difficult to get school kids to school. So it's how can I move into adulthood? How can I have an experience of where I really belong in this natural world and feel really deeply rooted in it, so that then that will strengthen me, affect me, give me a home as I go on my path. I'm doing another training on how to start working with ceremony. I'm doing a training for people to prepare for vision quest because I think it's quite difficult. I've decided, I haven't done it for years, for Westerners to go out on the land for 4 days and nights if they have no idea about praying or singing or the holy or anything. And some people will naturally do it. And I thought, but it might be helpful. It came to me. So I'm doing that with someone else. And actually at the moment, I am trying to help XR, Extinction Rebellion, because a lot of people go to it because it's one of the few protest groups that actually is researching, trying to work with how we are not just protest against, but how can we change our way of being so that we can live more in harmony with the natural world, and which we will have to do if we're going to survive. And so I'm trying to work with them to research how ways that people could start changing their habits so that they connect with others in a less competitive, angry way, in a more cooperative, kind way. And also, how do we start? It's very difficult making programs for people to really connect quite deeply with the earth. You know, lots of people go for walks, etc. They quite often go for walks with friends and they spend the entire walk chatting. You know what I'm saying? It's quite difficult. Anyway, that's a new interest, a new difficulty. So those are the two new difficulties are the rite of passage and the Extinction Rebellion stuff.
So how can people find out about what you do then? I'll put all this stuff in the show notes.
Well, it's not much. Well, I've got a website.
That'll do.
Do I say what it is?
Hartfield. Yeah, I'll put it all. So that's the easiest way for people to communicate with you.
And if people want to contact me, persevere. Because quite a lot of people contact me, right. And more and more really, and I'm really bad at administration, and emails come, emails, WhatsApps, don't go there. There's so many different electronic ways that I'm supposed to keep in touch with. So if you email me and I don't reply, email me again, because it's probably just gone down my page, and I'd be wildly apologetic. But I don't mind someone trying again and again until they get me. I don't feel harassed. I feel a bit relieved that someone isn't out there peeved because I haven't replied to them because something else has come along. I've gone out and looked at the change in the light or something, or watched the first star arrive, or seen a bird pop.
It's so easy for things to go and disappear.
Yes.
So that's good. Anyway, that's been a lovely chat, actually, Annie. It's nice to find out about how you sort of arrived with all this, because I know there's a lot more in your story, but I think that's probably whetted a lot of people's appetites, actually, for what you do. So yeah, I wish you all the best, and obviously I'll be talking to you at some point, because I'm sort of involved in this in some shape or form in one of these things that you're doing. Sounds very exciting. So I'm looking forward to that. So thank you very much, Annie, for talking to us.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to rattle on. It's great. Bye-bye.
See you then. Thank you. Thanks to Annie for her time. And we had some of the Zoom gremlins this time, which was the sort of irritating little echo that you could actually hear on part of the recording when I spoke, which is a little bit off-putting for me, but anyway, Annie's signal was really clear, which is nice. Yeah, so the information will be on the show notes, so if you would like to get in contact with Annie, that will be there. So until next time, see you then.